Good morning again.
Good morning.
And that's a good question. Do you know the truth of who you are? I mean, as Reverend Vaughn read, in the reading for the day, is we so many times, and I know I'm very guilty of it, we try to be who we think others think we should be, or what we should do, or how we should act. And we're not being our true selves. We're not being true to ourselves. We're cheating ourselves. And there's this reading here that says, our time should be devoted to knowing the truth that sets humanity free. Not just us, but humanity as a whole. Free from the problem of ignorance. That truth which alone can bring enlightenment to the world. That war should cease. That people should live together in harmony because they have the divinity within each other. And in today's, the light of everything happening today and what you were sharing with us, it's so appropriate, that we can actually live in harmony and peace and love. And I love that in that song when Andy, that's Andy Anderson, just comes out with all that, and it just feels right. Yesterday we had attended 2 different town hall meetings, which were interesting, which were very upbeat. Both of them. One was done on Rainier, and the other one was up on Capitol Hill. And it was interesting, not to get into politics, but interesting the one on Capitol Hill, that district there. He said, well, they're very unbalanced, because it's like, I forgot what he said, 97% Democrat, and he said, I think the rest are socialists. So in that area, I go, oh, that's interesting. But it was like everybody's coming to, people are coming together, and maybe that's what we need. Well, actually, I know that's what we need, because so many times it's me. Are you worrying about, maybe you and your family, but that's it. Everybody else has to fend for themselves because this is a dog-eat-dog world, which I don't believe that's what this was intended to be. No. That we were, put on this earth, and I know I was put on this earth to learn and to love, and to learn how to love. Not just the romantic love, but that deeper love, that divine love that we are created in. And that we can reach out. So many times we're afraid to reach out, try to step out, try to, and do something. And it just takes, one step. And there's somebody else there that has the same feeling, the same idea. So Brene Brown, there's a quote, and it says, owning our story and loving ourselves through the process is the bravest thing that we can ever do. And I love that, because I read that a few times and I'm going, what does that really mean to me? And to me, it's loving ourselves. Our stories all vary. Some of us may have, little parts of our stories that connect somehow, but because we're different. Each of us are different individuals. We're different expressions of the divine. And this owning our own story and loving ourselves through the process. Through the ups, the downs, and we are human, we make errors, we make mistakes, we bite people's heads off sometimes, but we can change, we can make amends, as Cheryl was saying, that people do change, people can change. And it's the idea that you really you've got to want to change. So something has to trigger that. But loving ourselves through this whole process is challenging. Because there are things I've done in my past life, one of my past lives, way back, that, I'm not proud of. Through my drinking days, my driving days, and all that. There's stuff there that I'm not proud of. But it's stuff I feel, I look back, I had to go through those steps to be where I am today, to be who I am today. And I believe each of us, on our journey, we have to go through certain things to change, to want to change, because I know I've done a couple talks on past lives, and I know I did this at Toastmasters once, and I know people are going to go, ooh, past lives, and all this. And to me, it's past lives within this lifetime, because if you go back to when you were a kid, and then you go into being a teenager, now there's a big difference there. Then you go into young adult, that freedom, that whatever you may call it, that crazy, well for me anyway, that crazy time. And you keep moving, and you keep changing, and you keep growing, you keep learning. Hopefully you keep learning. Some people it takes a little longer, a few more knocks, a few more 2x4s, until we finally say, okay, okay, this is where I need to go, this is what I want to do. And like you were saying, Charlie, that ask that question, what do you want to do? And to me, that's one of the hardest questions to answer. Because to be truthful and honest with myself is a challenging thing to ask myself, okay, what do I want to do in this life? What do I want to do next? And sometimes when I ask that question, I think the idea comes up that if I get what I want, then somebody else isn't going to get that. Like that job, or your job that your endeavor. That's I think one thing, working from home is great, for that. But just to ask ourselves to be that truth, to tell ourselves the truth. What do we really want? Who do we want to be? What do we want to leave as a legacy or a memory once we move on? That just came to me now. What do I want to leave as a memory of who I was here on this earth? Was I angry? Was I kind? Was I loving? Was I no good? Whatever. What do I want to leave? And to own our story is to tell the truth of who we are. And the truth of who we are is that we are perfect, whole, and complete beings. I'd say beings of light, because I like that idea, because when the sun comes out, sometimes, and there will be more sun, and it's like the rays from the sun. And you can stand there, and it warms you. And I love that feeling when it comes in, and I could just stand there and and it's like you're feeding on it. This light, this warmth, this energy that comes in and fills my being. So if we tell ourselves the truth of who we are, it's an ongoing process. It's an ongoing reconciliation that we have to do. Because when we make errors and mistakes, don't beat ourselves up. I have a habit of flogging myself. I'm great, nice floggers, and I'm sure each of us have the process of beating ourselves up when maybe, like yesterday, for instance, I felt really bad. Somebody gave me a hug, and I felt really upset for quite a while that I hugged, but it wasn't like I normally do. Well, there was a process going on within me at that time. And so later on, before I left, I was able to do what I really wanted to do, to give this person a hug back and reach out and be the first one to do it. And because I didn't want that, I was feeling very guilty that this person was hugging me and I wasn't present. And so I'm sitting there during the town hall, and this is going on in my head, and so in order to get rid of it, I had to do something about it. I had to change that. And that's like a lot of things in life. We do things and then we walk away and we feel bad because we might have snapped at somebody or said a bad word. And we can always go back and change that. We can always go back and say, I'm sorry for what I did. I know in AA and the 12 steps, there's you make your amends. You make this list, and then you make this amend. And that is not an easy thing to do. If you look back at your life, it is not easy. And sometimes you cannot physically do that. And sometimes in our lives too, we can't physically do that because we won't maybe only met that person at one time and we'll never see him again. But what we can do is what I was taught was you can write a letter, and from the sincerity within, write this letter, apologizing, and then burn it, because you've released it. They may never know, and a lot of times when you make these amends, once you make the amend, you have to let it go, just like anything else. You are not responsible how this person may react. Because they may not come up and be all lovey-dovey with you. They may still not want to be around you. But you have done your step. You've done your process. You have apologized, and sometimes it is more for us, this apology is to release us from that guilt. Because there's the idea about the guilt and shame. And the name of this in the outline today for the talk was, and I wasn't really too hot on it, it was webs and boxes. And I'm going, what? What are they talking about? So I'm reading it, and we've had this talk before about some of these things, and it's like, but actually in this part here, where it made a lot of sense because they're talking about shame and guilt. And the idea of shame is it's the universal tapes that run in us is that we're never good enough. And it asks the question, who do we think we are that we want this in our lives, or we want this great job, we want those golden wings, you know? Who are we to think that? And the other question is, to me, who are we not to think that? That's the whole thing in a nutshell is, who are we not? We are, you know, this expression on this earth, whether we're on a Segway, a bicycle, driving, walking, floating in the air. I want to do that. I want to fly. And here it said that when it comes down to the shame is for women, shame is a web. And that this web, it's the web of competing and conflicting expectations. Not just their own expectations, but expectations that, you know, women are supposed to be, you know, this way. The old thing was barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. And now it seems like, you know, and women are not in control of their bodies, you know, that us as men, we as men, it makes about as much sense as us as men know how to control that. We know what's best for the women, which is a bunch of bull, you know. And I just don't understand a lot of that thinking. But for men, the shame is a box. Do not want to be perceived as weak, or do not want to be criticized or ridiculed. And I think that part can go either way. But the idea of being seen as weak. I know as a kid, as a boy, I did my share of crying. I don't do any of that now. Lightning will strike me. You know, and always, you know, because boys don't cry. You know, be a man, suck it up, you know, all that. And so men don't want to be perceived as weak and vulnerable. And women, you know, they've got all these expectations that are set upon them from childhood on. I've watched several things on TV, these crime shows where they've got those little girls, and they have them, you know, in these beauty contests. And to me, that irritates the hell out of me, because they dress them up like adult women with the makeup, I mean, they do surgical alterations and stuff, and let the kid be a kid, and that's either male or female. But then they get this idea of this is what they have to be, this is who they have to be, and they're not true to themselves. Like on the coins in AA, it says, to thine own self be true. And in the reading Reverend Vaughn did, I mean, basically that is, to me, the golden rule. Because if you're not true to yourself, you're not going to be true to anybody else. And that's just like loving yourself. You have to love and accept yourself before you can expect somebody else to do that to you. And it's just unbelievable that sometimes that shame that we instill on ourselves, or we allow others to inflict on us. And then there's the difference between shame and guilt. And shame, I mean, it's very simple. It says, guilt is, I did something bad. And shame is, I am bad. And I always thought for many years that I was, you know, I was bad. I was, for certain issues in my life. And it's taken a long time, and I don't know if I'll ever complete that process. As we go through life, it changes. Things change, and this little ugly head will pop up. But it's different than it originally popped up, because we have done work with it. We have looked at it. We have accepted, you know, our role in the incident or the process. Sometimes that's the thing, to being truthful with ourselves. Okay, what role did I play in this situation? And that's like when our youngest daughter said one time that I fight silently. And you go, oh, she was paying attention. Kids are unbelievable. People think that they're these little entities that know nothing, that don't observe anything, and that's a crock. Because I was a kid once, and I listened a lot. I didn't do a lot of talking, but I listened, and I learned a lot. But anyway, when she said that, I looked back and I said, well, the reason I don't like to, like when something happens and I get upset and I don't like to argue or whatever. I grew up in a house of arguing, yelling and screaming and flying things. And I'll run from that in a heartbeat now, because I just detest that. But I have to, when something happens, I have to, that's a question, I go quiet, I go within. And I ask all these questions, you know, because I don't want to say something I might regret. Because I've done that before in my life. And to me, it's easier to go through the process and to think, okay, what role did I play in this? Maybe a minor role, maybe a big role. Maybe I instigated by something I said, you know, and it's a process. I mean, it's not beating myself up, it's just going through this process of figuring out, okay, what responsibility was mine? And in there's 3 universal truths about shame. It says, we all have it, we're afraid to talk about it, and the less we talk about it, the more we have it. So it's like this little gerbil, or a little hamster or gerbil on this wheel. We just keep going around in circles. And so if we can talk about these things and get rid of that shame, I think sometimes the guilt is in some ways a good thing. Just like fear is not a good thing to live in, but fear has its points. Like, you know, if you don't look across, when you're crossing the street, you may get run over by a car. So there are little certain things where fear and guilt, because guilt, in essence, that way we say, okay, that was not the right thing to do. That was not a healthy thing to do, maybe for our bodies or something. But then we move into the other part of the reading thing is the authenticity. And I just, that's one thing, ever since I've been in religious science, that brought about, well, actually before that, but it really came to, I guess, maybe to the surface more, was being authentic. To not be that person that others think you should be, but be that person that you are. And to me, being authentic and living in integrity in all areas of your life, not just Sunday mornings. You know, I've witnessed that in in the past, you know. You're holy on Sunday morning because you go to church, and then what do? Sunday afternoon, you're in a bar, getting drunk, doing whatever. To me, that's kind of like, you know, not being authentic. Maybe you are authentic when you're in that bar. You know, maybe that's at that time and at that point, maybe you are. However, if we try to be true to ourselves, speak our truth, and not necessarily speak our truth so we harm others. I mean, that has sometimes come up in the past where you have to kind of, you know, weigh it out in your mind. As somebody asked me one time, when this is years ago, this woman asked me at Boeing how I liked her new hair. And I was stupid. I said, I don't. And later on, like, all these things later on, what I could have said that would have been a little kinder and softer, a little gentler. And sometimes, you know, brutal honesty is not necessarily a good thing, because we have to take other people's feelings into consideration, just like we hope that they take our feelings into consideration. But you know, being authentic and being in integrity and being true to yourself, to me, that's one big ball. Because when you are in that place of authenticity, you can't help but be true to yourself and to others. Because that's like, you know, it's like those, I'm picturing those golden wings. I think they're awesome. And when you get excited about something, and truly that excitement, like a little kid, like when you open a present or something, that's something that you really wanted, that joy and that excitement, to me, that's being authentic. Allowing yourself to laugh, to giggle, to cry. Sometimes you may have to go somewhere and scream. I know I've had to do that before, and you know, it helps. It helps better than screaming in somebody's face. But that's all part of this process that we're going through. And that first thing that, her quote, to me, is basically the theme for today and for moving on, is owning our story. Our story. And our story changes. Owning it and loving ourselves through it. That's the key thing, allowing ourselves to move through it. Not to sit there and, like in the 23rd Psalm, you know, you don't, the shadow of the valley of the shadow of death, whatever, you don't build a condo, you don't buy a timeshare, you're moving through it. And life, we have processes that we move through, and don't allow them to pull us back, pull us down. Look at them, move on. And so it is. And I have another song that I found that I really wanted to play because it's